a lot of ET craft activity occurs under the ocean as well, and we've seen that at our Outer Banks trainings. I wouldn't be surprised if we'd see it at the Florida training.
Yes, in fact, there are accounts of people, fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico, being out in boats and seeing these objects come up right up out of the Gulf of Mexico and then lift off and go into space. And so it's going to be a very now we have never, to be honest, done an expedition at this particular place. It's a very remote island. It takes quite a drive to get out there from the Fort Myers airport where we're flying in. I think it's an hour and a half drive, and it's literally we're going to be on the tip of this island out surrounded by water, which would be fantastic. And we're going to be meeting in this oceanfront house that we're renting there out on this island, and that's February 7th to 12th. Be a nice break from the cold, those of us that are living anywhere but South Florida where it's been sub-zero, the whole continent it seems. And so we'll be out there every night under the stars on the beach, and during the daytime we're going to be teaching people about contact, how it occurs, how to do the meditation. We're going to do a puja and teach people the mantra meditations, and also give people the teaching on remote viewing. And then every night we will go out under the stars and make contact and see what happens. So it's very exciting, and you're invited if you can make it.
It's always exciting, and I don't know if you wanted to go into our experiences that we have had on the beach before off of Outer Banks. Most recently, just phenomenal experience at our last training there.
Yes, I know. It's sort of like bookends this whole discussion, you know. Well, maybe you want to go into that, Linda. It's very interesting because it was just last late April, early May that we had about 30 people or 40 people out on the beach at the barrier islands off the coast of North Carolina that are called the Outer Banks, and what an amazing thing happened. We're going to be doing that again, by the way, in April of this year. If you go to CSETI.org, you'll see the schedule for that, and you're invited to come to that as well if you'd like to come out to the Outer Banks. But yeah, why don't you share some of that? It was really interesting what happened this year.
Well, one of the most amazing things about it was it happened our very first night out with a group of approximately 40 people, 25 of which were brand new.
That's right, yeah.
And usually, well, in the past, it has been somewhat predictable that the activity level kind of ramps up over the week that we're out because of the new people in the group, you know, maybe not knowing what to expect. But this was our very first night out in the field, and it kind of all started when in the distance from I don't remember the directions exactly, but I believe it was southwest to northwest. The sky was just full of these little flickering lights, and they weren't stars at all. They were ET craft that were way, way out in the atmosphere. And our attention was really directed at that because the sky was so full of these little blinking lights. And in the opposite direction, where not everyone was looking, but plenty of people were, this large craft that was maybe up to 3 inches long at arm's length popped into the atmosphere up high, and it kind of as it moved down and ultimately went into the ocean, it kind of went on and off. So it was almost like a rock skipping kind of through the sky, and it went into the ocean. And I only saw the end part where it went into the ocean. I didn't see it from the very beginning, but Dr. Greer did.
Yeah, well, you know, it was interesting because I was looking to the south and telling the group that the previous year we had this weird manta ray type of ET craft that flew up out of the ocean and flew over the dune and flew right over us at that site or very near that site.
Right.
On this little island that we're on, that's a national wildlife refuge and what was amazing is that the craft, when it came over, came from this southern direction. So I was talking about that and pointing exactly in that direction. So there were about 16 or 17 people, I think we counted, that were looking that way when this thing flew in. And if you hold your arm, those of you listening right now, take your arm and put your fingers, your thumb and your index finger, and measure about 3 inches. Now look how big that is in the sky. If you hold it up to the sky, if you're near a window, compared to, say, a jetliner or something, that is huge. So it was close and it was big. And it came in, and it was fully materialized, lit this sort of golden white color, and it was at a 45-degree angle disc coming in, and it appeared and materialized, and then it would go out and dematerialize. You could see nothing, and then it would rematerialize and then go off, and it did it on and on and off like that, and several times, very quickly, as it went into the ocean. Unfortunately, the camera was facing the other way, filming these weird things in space. They were above the atmosphere that were like Christmas tree lights that were going on and off. And we figured out those were over Atlantic Command. And I think that what was happening is that the ETs had set up something to let a sort of a protective field so that this thing could come in, and it did, and it went straight into the ocean. The last materialization of it was just before it entered the water right off of the coast of North Carolina. Now, this was astonishing. People were just gasping, of course, to see something that huge and that bright. But what happened after that was even more astonishing, frankly. It's probably one of the most astonishing and bizarre things that you may want to share, Linda.
Yeah, we always sit in a circle of people, and we had positioned our circle probably, I don't know, maybe approximately 150 feet from where the surf was breaking on the beach. And so while we were looking in that direction, because it was towards the, obviously towards the beach and the ocean, that the craft had gone into the ocean, so we were all standing there looking and commenting about it, and we started seeing this, like, bright flash happening on the beach, and it was approximately halfway between us and where the surf was breaking. We later stepped it off, and it was 90 feet from the that edge of our circle,
right,
which is really close.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a bright light that would occasionally go on and off, not in any pattern, but if you looked long enough, it would happen again and again. And it was like a white flash, but sometimes near it would be like an amber flash, and then kind of near it would be a teal flash. So there were actually 3 that were going off. And our cameraman was filming through night vision, so all the flashes look white, and they're also, like, they were more sort of pinpointy, but still big with the naked eye, but in the camera they're big, through the night vision. And over an hour's time, we stood there and watched it, and absolutely everyone saw it many times because, with that period of time, and everyone had time to look in the right place and watch, and it flashed over 100 times on our camera.
Yes, it was very interesting because it was, to have an object 90 feet away, it sort of dematerialized. Now, what this was this huge ship that had flown in came up on the beach transdimensionally. So visualize this. It's shifted beyond the speed of light and the speed of electrons and matter, but it's there in that sort of etheric field, and you can see the outline of it. In the center of it are these beings, and this is why I'm convinced these are actually beings that are there. And it's sort of an electronic astral projection. It's like if you took an electronic system that could take your astral body that you have lucid dreams with and turn it into an electronics projector system. And that came up on the beach 90 feet from us, and there were at least 3 of them because they were distinct colors and going around. And this was seen by everyone for over an hour, and it was around 100 times that these signaled to us. Now, this is just so astonishing, and one of the things that was a sort of a hidden message in this is that a couple days before this expedition last year, this was in the end of April, early May of 2009 that we were at the Outer Banks, the G7 country, the top, the G7 are the top industrialized countries and economies in the world. One of them had been meeting with us for a number of years or corresponding about setting up a contact protocol for their country so that they could make contact with these ET beings. And of course, the wheels of government turn very slowly, and so that's that. But we had just met with these people who do the briefings for the head of state and the Ministry of Defense for that country on the ET issue. And we had just put them back on a plane in Washington, D.C. We had them in Washington and out here at our farm in Virginia for meetings for about a week. And I was asking the ETs and myself, could we have an event happen with people who were complete novices in the sense that they had not had extensive training in meditation, remote viewing, contact, or what have you? And the answer the ETs gave was this event at the Outer Banks, where 25 people who've never been seen anything like this or done a CE5 to make contact came, registered for the training, showed up, and the very first night we're out there gathered, this event happens. And the message I was told was that mentally I was told, this is your answer. Yes, it can happen, and it will happen. So it was very, very exciting. Interestingly, this was filmed. It's in the, I mentioned this new book, Contact, Countdown to Transformation. This whole event is recounted in there, and is also this videotape is in the DVD that you get. It's part of the purchase price of the book, and we just give it for free, basically, to people from disclosureproject.org. So if you want to see this film footage and read the account of everything that happened there, it's much more involved than what we're sharing. I think you might want to get that. The other thing that's very exciting is that the part that's more personal for me, I didn't. And no one else experienced this, so I just have to share with people with what happened to me, is that after this had gone on for a certain amount of time, and we were there remote viewing in consciousness these ET beings and filming these brilliant lights that would flash periodically on the beach, literally in the same location. It was right over the sand, by the way, maybe 90 feet from us, as Linda said. We pasted off the next day, or a couple of days later when it was daylight. What we found towards the end of this, I felt I should walk out to these beings and welcome them officially. And I always put my sort of hands out by my sides with my palms, my hands down, my arms down, and my palms facing out to welcome them, and sort of make a triangle with my third eye and my two hands as sort of a energetic field to both transmit and receive energy and also information. And I walked into the center of where these lights were, and I went into this area that it was a little bit on my right side that was such a blinding light. It was this beautiful light and it was so emotional for me, because it was almost like I could have left and gone with them, and just left. But I didn't, of course, because I'm not supposed to leave yet, I guess. But it was very poignant, and I was so overwhelmed with emotions. I was weeping. I couldn't. It was very emotional, very beautiful.
And those of us that were watching you, we saw you engulfed by a sort of energy where you semi-disappeared into it.
Yes, the people behind me who were watching sort of saw me sort of dematerialize, and I felt like I was. I felt like I was actually, my energy was shifting to where my physical body was dissolving, and it was a wonderful experience. But of course, I didn't leave, because here I am. But the point is that it was a very beautiful and really almost sacred experience, because these are our ancestors from the stars, and I'm quite convinced that these are the civilizations that we're having contact with are the sort of primogenitor, the origins of life on Earth, but also the guardians of life on Earth, that are very, very concerned with the state of the world today, but also very supportive of people who are wanting to make contact to bring the planet into another whole era of enlightenment and new energy and knowledge, and to leave the old and broken ways behind and move forward. which is what this whole time of enlightenment is all about. And these ETs have been very involved with observing this. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that we've had so much contact emanating from the sector of where Sirius and Orion is in the sky. And the Orion transmissions, which are in this new book that describe the message I received when we had these electromagnetic signals that came in for a couple of hours into Joshua Tree National Park in 2008, last year or year before now, a little over a year ago. And I think those messages are really quite accurate about the time that we're living in and the time we're emerging into. And there's actually a chapter in this new book, Contact, A Countdown to Transformation, that is called the Orion Transmissions. And on the DVD, you can actually hear some of these transmissions. We obviously don't have 2 hours of them, but we have a few minutes of them so people get a sense of how incredible they were as they were coming through our electronic devices in the middle of this national park and wilderness. It was just amazing. And what we found was that, from that experience is that I looked into the fact that if the ancient Vedic knowledge, the Vedanta and the Vedic knowledge and the ancient Egyptian knowledge, in those traditions, it is thought that those wisdoms and that knowledge came from Sirius and Orion. And it's interesting because clearly we're having an increasing level of contact from civilizations that are headquartered out in that sector of space. Perhaps not that necessarily that nebula, but in that area of space. If you look out at the sky this time of year, you can see Orion's belt and Orion's sword and Sirius, which is like a beautiful diamond shining in the sky at night. In that sector is where we were having the transmissions, the Orion transmissions emanating from. And I get the sense that it is the ancient, very ancient, enlightened God consciousness civilizations of ancient times that are very near and very much involved with what we are doing at this point in time.
Another really interesting thing about that experience on the banks at on the beach at the Outer Banks was that almost every time we see an ET craft come into our atmosphere, it is quickly followed within 1 minute's time, usually by a military jet.
Right.
In their efforts to suppress the activity so we don't stir up something really big. And there were absolutely no jets that interfered during this whole hour-long period that we were having, that the craft came down into the ocean and then we were having this interaction on the beach. And that's why we attribute that protective activity to all the little large flotilla of little crafts that we saw out in the sky.
Yes, I was actually told that's what was happening, but now the next day we actually had fighter jets that came right over our house at maybe 200 feet in clear violation of FAA requirements, strafing the house and the beach where we were doing this. People were kind of astonished.
And it was that next day that when you and I were walking on the beach, we saw that what we thought was an island. I mean, I would have thought it was an island, except that there aren't any islands in the Atlantic.
Right, and Raven Nabulsi, if you look on our website, CSETI.org, you'll see a photograph of a disc at that same kind of 45-degree angle out over the water that she had taken. She felt it was there. With the naked eye, couldn't see anything, took a picture, and there's this disc, clearly, that is there hovering over the ocean, all from where the house is that we use for our meetings there in Nags Head at the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But that morning, that next day, when Linda and I were doing our walk on the beach, we looked out, and I was so disoriented, I thought I was in California looking at Catalina Island. Because if you ever walked on a beach and seen an island in the distance, it sort of rises up in the haze, and it kind of goes up, and then you can see the other end of it. Well, there was this object out there, and then I turned to Linda. I said, "But there are no islands off the coast of that. We are the last island until you get all the way to, North Africa or whatever's due, or Bermuda or whatever's due east of the Outer Banks." So I have been there many times. There's no landmass to see, but this looked like a gunmetal gray. It came up and was flat on top and then went down, and it covered at least 3 miles of the horizon, and it was seen by other people.
Right, and it followed us kind of as we walked south.
Yes, and we didn't have a camera with us. There was a man who was on our training from Ireland, I believe he was, and he didn't know the geography of the area, and he thought it was a landmass, and then he saw that it had disappeared. He did have a camera, but didn't take a picture because he thought, oh, well, it's an island also, that's way out there. Well, there are no islands that you can see from this location. I've been there many, many times since I was a child. And so, it is just astonishing what we've seen. But luckily, when it dematerialized and then went up into the sky a little bit, Raven did get a great picture of it, and that's also on this disc, the DVD, I should say, that it goes with the book, the new book, Contact, Countdown to Transformation.